Today, we're going to talk about a young woman named Maya. At 19, she should be absolutely full of life, but instead, it feels like something is slowly stealing her glow. Let's figure out what's really going on. Right off the bat, you need to understand this isn't the kind of ache you get from sleeping funny. No way. This is a sharp, aggressive fire that basically runs her life. Every movement becomes an enemy. It's this deep, visceral pain that clues us in that we're looking at a real medical mystery.
And when you look at Maya, you can literally see the toll this invisible illness is taking. The slide calls it a portrait of stolen youth, and well, you can see why. Her complexion isn't just pale, it's described as earthy. Her eyes are hollow, circled by exhaustion. This isn't just about feeling sick on the inside, it's physically changing her, robbing her of that look of being young and carefree. And then, it gets even weirder. On top of that awful pain, she feels this bubbling. Can you imagine? It's a bizarre, really unsettling warning sign coming from deep inside her body. It's one of those symptoms that's so hard to describe, so easy for someone else to dismiss, but for Maya, it's this constant, worrying feeling. So, what on earth could be causing such a strange and debilitating mix of symptoms, especially in someone so young? That's the big question, right? And it's what we're going to dig into now as we shift from her personal story to the medical clues. All right, to figure this out, we have to put on our detective hats. We're looking at a hidden storm brewing inside Maya, and based on the evidence so far, we've got two main suspects we need to investigate. Okay, so suspect number one is cholelithiasis. Most of us just know them as gallstones. Basically, these are little hardened deposits that form in your gallbladder. Think of them like tiny unwanted pebbles forming right where they shouldn't be. And then we have suspect number two, nephrolithiasis, or kidney stones. Again, the name pretty much says it all. These are little pebbles that form up in the urinary tract, usually starting in the kidneys. Now, both conditions involve stones, but believe me, where they form and the kind of chaos they cause are totally different. Now pay attention, because this slide is key. It lays out the differences side by side. Just look at the pain location. For gallstones, the pain is higher up, upper abdomen, maybe your shoulder. But for kidney stones, it's lower, your back, your side, your groin. This difference in where it hurts is our first major clue. Okay, now we're diving into decoding the pain. It's time to take these medical facts and connect them back to Maya. Her body is leaving this trail of clues, and now we actually have the tools to start following it. When we look at all of Maya's symptoms, we see the internal damage this is causing. I mean, pale, clay-colored stools and that yellowish tint to her skin, jaundice, those are classic textbook warning signs that something is really wrong with her biliary system, the whole system that handles bile and the gallbladder. And this quote from the Cleveland Clinic explains exactly why. Pale, clay-colored stool happens when you don't have enough bile in your digestive system. See, bile is actually what gives stool its normal brown color. So if it's pale, that means something, like a gallstone, is probably causing a major traffic jam. So how do these blockages even happen? Well, it's pretty much a three-step process. First, the liver starts making way too much cholesterol, more than the bile can handle. Then all that extra cholesterol starts forming tiny crystals. And finally, over time, those little crystals clump together and grow into full-blown gallstones. Okay, this all seems to be pointing straight at gallstones, right? But hold on. We can't forget that very first symptom we talked about. The digestive issues don't really explain that incredibly intense, specific pain in her kidney area. We have to look at the other side of this story. And this is where kidney stones, or renal colic, come roaring back into the picture. Unlike a lot of other pains, this one has a predictable, vicious cycle. The pain builds and builds, hits this absolutely brutal peak for hours, and then slowly fades, only to potentially start all over again. It is relentless. And here's another classic clue. Kidney stone pain moves. As the stone travels down the little tube from the kidney to the bladder, the pain literally follows it. This loin to groin journey is a hallmark sign. So when you add this to her digestive symptoms, it brings up a whole new question. Could Maya actually be suffering from both issues at the same time? Untangling a complex medical mystery like this is one thing. But what about the person who's living it? A diagnosis is so much more than just a list of symptoms. For a 19-year-old, this is completely life-altering.
Which brings us to our final and maybe the most important part of this whole story, the invisible burden. The physical pain is just one piece of the storm that young people with chronic illness have to navigate every single day.
This quote, wow. It's echoed in so many studies of young people with chronic conditions, and it's just heartbreaking. It's this plea for a life without constant pain, without endless doctor's appointments, without a body that feels like it's betrayed you. It's a longing for a normal life that's been stolen.
The psychological weight here is just immense. There's this profound sense of being different, of being an other. These kids feel like they're forced to grow up way too fast, constantly having to explain their invisible condition to friends, to teachers, even to their own families. And it creates this deep sense of isolation at a time in life when social connection is supposed to be everything. And now, here's the reveal. We've been telling Maya's story, and it feels so real because, well, it is. Her symptoms, her pain, her experiences, they aren't just something we made up for a story. They are pulled directly from documented clinical medical texts. Look at this. The crucial point is that every single specific detail we mentioned, that stitching, cutting pain, the bizarre bubbling sensation, the pale, earthy complexion, is an exact description from medical literature for the symptoms tied to these conditions. So Maya might be a composite, but her suffering is absolutely clinically real and documented. So we've pieced together the medical mystery. But why tell the story this way? Why blend this personal narrative with a clinical investigation? What's the real takeaway here? It matters because young people in pain are too often disbelieved. Their complaints get written off as stress or anxiety or just growing pains. Society has a really hard time accepting that a young body can feel so old, and that skepticism causes real harm and delays the care they desperately need. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. Maya's story is a cry for help, made up of real documented symptoms. So the question for all of us, for friends, for family, for medical professionals, is when a young person is describing their hidden storm, are we actually trained and are we willing to truly listen?